Good morning. I hope the mic's on. Dear friends, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me start with a small reflection on the Internet. I believe Internet is a young lady who has barely turned 30. She was born out of national ambition, married to academic curiosity, later nurtured and educated by millions of private admirers, and today cherished by billions of us. Every third citizen on the earth is one way or the other related to this realm. She governs the realm we call cyberspace, and she rules in her own way. You may ask why I call Internet a she. I do because Internet is young, beautiful, dynamic, and full of surprises. And we all know she's also unpredictable. There are threats. Like in the real world, there are bad guys and there are good guys, and we have to learn to live with this new reality. Well, on a more serious note, on several fora on global and national levels, we've discussed cybersecurity, cyber defense, and everything related to managing the threats that emerge from this new reality. My personal experience, as was said before, started in 2007. I was second week in the office of the Minister of Defense, where the government took a decision to relocate the Soviet-type war memorial, and that resulted in extensive attacks on our cyber infrastructure. What did it practically look like? In a very small country where we have only a few banks, actually 2 banks have a share of 90% of the market, they were basically down. E-services were not functioning. Distributed denial of service attacks brought down online news. At the same time, we had riots on the streets, and people started asking, who's in charge? What's going on? I think it was for the first time people realized that cyber threats can be perceived, or even they can be, a real national security threat. So since then, we've discussed the cyber threats on several fora. We've developed defenses, we've developed strategies, we've tried to manage cyber crime, cyber espionage, cyber sabotage, cyber terrorism, pornography, you just name it. A multitude of different phenomena we have had to tackle during these years, and we most probably haven't gone half the way to solve it. I have to remind another aspect of Estonia and Internet, and that's Internet. I was trying to hear several times yesterday that the importance of freedom re-emphasized. And we all know that without that freedom, Internet wouldn't be what it is today. Freedom is important. As for Estonia, we've been proud to be ranked by Freedom House the #1 country by Internet freedom. Unfortunately, we were toppled last year by Iceland. So we try hard next year to gain back the #1 Internet freedom status in the future. In all our countries, including Estonia, we have compiled cybersecurity strategies, action plans, different needs to fight the threats and to address the multitude of threats from cyberspace. We need these strategies in place. We need to develop and make them more detailed, more effective, more engaging. But another important feature, I think, is we need to understand the logic of development of cyberspace. Minister Kabir said yesterday, governance of Internet is an oxymoron. And he had these arguments. I do have mine. Internet is essentially the environment Sorry. Hello? Is it better now? Hopefully. Internet is essentially an environment. And in the case of environment, it's wiser not to think in the terms of eliminating or blocking the threats, but rather building resilience. Building resilience is a somewhat different attitude. Resilience of the whole community of consumers or of the whole society, instead of building particular defenses around national, sectorial, institutional, or personal interests. We need actually both, but resilience, I believe, is more important. It's like people living close to sea manage ebbs and flows, and those close to geological disruptions, earthquakes. They learn to live with it. So, once again, we need plans, but even more, we need public awareness, rules of good behavior, cyber hygiene, and simple common sense. Very many of us, including myself, sometimes lack when we are left alone with a computer. Building this culture, which I call cyber hygiene, is very, very important. We may defend our institutions, our classified networks, to the utmost extreme. But when anybody of our employees finds a memory stick on his doorstep and plugs it into a wrong computer, we have a problem. So the human factor shouldn't be underestimated, rather the other way around. I'd start with a few remarks on cyber. I think we sometimes tend to mystify cyber. We believe that cyberspace is all virtual, obscure, not transparent, so on, so on, so on, and it's true to a certain extent, but only to a certain extent. I think we should never forget simple things. First, people, and only people, make things happen, both bad and good. Cyber doesn't make things happen. People make things happen. And there is always a physical effect in real physical space. It has a location, it has content, and we can see and understand what has happened. So it starts and ends in physical space. And the act of will carried out by a bad or a good guy is real, and the outcome is real. And it actually doesn't matter how many times the signal circled the globe before it hit the target. And from this basic understanding, I think we can draw fundamental consequences. In the field of cyber defense, response to cyber attack. If the effect of an attack is extensive material damage or loss of lives, which in ordinary space can be called an act of war, it is an act of war also if it was carried out via cyberspace. And what's the consequence? Kinetic response is appropriate. There have been theoretical discussions. Can we imagine the nuclear response? And I would answer, one shouldn't exclude, in principle. As you heard before, after the attacks in 2009, Estonia, together with its NATO partners, established a NATO cooperative cyber defense center of excellence in Tallinn. And one of the publicly available products of that institution is a book called Tallinn Manual on Cyber Warfare. This reflects in the way our NATO partners and us understand how we should legislate into the area of cyber conflict and cyber war. Closer to everyday life. When somebody is killed with a knife or shot with a gun, he or she shall be punished. There's no doubt about it. When it's done via internet, it's no difference. The same should apply. However, we see applying this principle a number of practical problems, sometimes conceptual problems. If somebody robs a bank with a gun, there is a public perception of the man as of a robber. When somebody steals millions from a bank via internet, there is a possibility that he may become a hero, and the victim might be the bank or even the culprit for not building appropriate defenses. We should work on the public awareness side of this problem. What can our governments do on national level? I'm only addressing a few issues which I think are relevant in the broader respect of societal responsibility. Internet commons is a public good, and we have common interest of all consumers. So we could take the attitude of consumer protection. If we really want to achieve resilience of our societies, we need to cooperate and build cooperative defenses. And it is because of the network nature of internet. Potential offense is also networked. So must be the defense. And this is essential. This is not technical. This is essential. What does that mean? I give you 3 suggestions, what a government might do to build resilience instead of hierarchical defenses. Where possible, use community and industry standards to protect your critical infrastructure, institutions, organizations, instead of creating laws and regulations that rigidly protect your society. Secondly, facilitate cooperation, offer expert support, organize voluntary cyber defense formations. In the example of Estonia, we have a paramilitary defense league, very much like the American Home Guard, and we have created cyber units, voluntary, which involve cybersecurity specialists from the private sector as well as academic sector. They work together in peaceful times and can, in the case of emergency, be mobilized like the Defense League itself. And thirdly, very many cyber attacks and events are not reported because of the damage to reputation of institutions. Banks don't do that. Major companies don't do that. Government offices don't do that. The government has the possibility to offer clearinghouse service to gather and distribute best practice without naming and shaming those who've been attacked. There's a vast experience available, but it's distributed and it's not available to those who want to educate, to build defenses. So I think the government might contribute to developing such structures. And last but not least, everything we face in the form of threats is first and foremost related to trust and confidence. It is wise to bear in mind that you can only trust somebody. You cannot trust internet per se or its services. You can trust somebody. Somebody you know. That means you need an identity. And I fully agree with what Minister Sibal said yesterday. The issue of identity is essential. Is essential if we want to tackle the problem of security on internet. The identity in internet is a growing concern, and we need trustees for reliable identity management. We need a third body whom we trust, me and my partner, so that my identity can be proven by an independent, trustworthy partner. The governments, I believe, have the responsibility to make trusted identity available. The governments may offer it through the government agency, as they often do, but they also may do that through trusting a private partner, for instance, a telecom company, We've done both in Estonia. I'd like now to involve you in a demonstration of how far we are willing, ready, and practically able to go in the case of Estonia, involving Estonian citizens and residents. Estonia has offered electronic ID cards to all citizens and residents. And on the forthcoming Sunday, the 20th, Estonia holds local elections. Since 2007, the government has made possible to cast your vote via internet. Electronic ballot boxes are open since last Friday. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to cast my vote on local elections in Estonia right here. So this is the electronic identity card. I have another government-trusted identity together with the Estonian Telecom, and that sits in my iPhone. In principle, I can sign legally binding documents using these two devices from my computer up here on the stage, including casting my vote on local elections. I hope this device will read the data and present them on the news. I trust the program. I'll open it. It gives me two options. The left one is an ID card. This one, the right one is the mobile ID. I choose ID card. It asks my PIN code. Connecting the server in Estonia. Takes longer again. Too many people watching. Sorry for that. Too many people watching. Good news, there's some activity going on. I ran into a problem. Well, because of unknown reasons, I can prove I managed it earlier in my hotel room. But I wanted to finish with thinking a little bit why this is altogether possible. First, because Estonian citizens trust their government, because they are ready to have an electronic identity, and there is no problem of the big brother. So we are not afraid of our governments, that they follow what we are doing with our electronic identity. Secondly, the governments must trust their people so that they don't misuse the document. We don't sell our cards and votes and PIN codes and so on and so forth. The people have to trust the government that there is no election fraud in the electronic environment. The code that carries out these operations is made publicly available for public scrutiny. Everybody can read the code, try to corrupt it. We've invited or even hired hackers who could corrupt the system so that we can prove and improve the system and making it more resilient and functional. So what I wanted to tell you, the main task of the governments and societies is to build the appropriate culture of living in the real as well as virtual space. This is a national undertaking. Companies can't do that. The military can't do it. The Ministry of Interior can't do that. People can make that happen. It takes time, and it evolves through confidence-building measures. Building trust. Building relationships and partnerships which you can trust. And by that means minimizing the risks and building the necessary resilience without excessively restricting the freedom of the wonderful internet, who I said is a she who's barely turned 30. Thank you for your attention, and I'm sorry for the technical problems.
Three questions?
Absolutely.
We have mics if anybody would like to ask a question. Yeah, Abhijit.
Thank you, Minister. I'm Abhijit from ORF. I just need to ask you, in a country like India where trust in the government is in acute deficit, I mean, we don't even report ordinary injured people on the street to the police for fear of harassment and things like that. What kind of a pathway to trust do you see? Because the problems you face with your neighbors, your big neighbor to the east, is very different in India. There it's acts of omission, that human rights violations. Here it's, there it's acts of commission, here it's acts of omission. So what part of trust do you actually see?
Well, all governments in the world have problems with trust. No government, and that for due reason, I think, can be sure that she is fully trusted. This is a process. As for building trust in a complicated environment, including hostile environment, it's like an ordinary life. It's through finding friends, through partnerships that, based on experience, are mutually beneficial, step by step, step by step. So it's, in a way, a cultural process. It's not only a political process. I believe it's a cultural phenomenon. And you simply have to invest and invest and invest and invest over time until you reach an appropriate level of trust, including with your adversaries, including with those you believe are hostile. Well, this may become a little bit too philosophical, but at least in Europe, it was hard to believe that Germany and France build the relationship they live in today. So almost everything is possible.
I would like to know how soon result will be declared in your country now that process is on. How long it takes to declare result?
Sorry? Of the elections, the electronic elections go on for a week, and then on Sunday there is the election day where you can cast your paper ballots. Even if you have casted an electronic vote, you can re-vote with a paper ballot. But they will be made known by midnight. So The offices are closed at 8 o'clock in the evening, and by midnight the results will be made known. Of course, they understand Estonia is 1,000 times smaller than India.
And since when you have been using this process, electronic process?
2007.
Thank you.
And the number of people who participate in electronic elections have steadily grown. We believe that 1/3 to 40% of votes will be cast electronically this time.
Chairman Chopra, you had this massive hacking in your country in 2007 when you took over. I wouldn't attribute it to the fact that you took over as defense minister. But since the banking was taken care of, the services and allied institutions, have you all tried to analyze why did this heavy hack take place so that you may prepare to counter this in the future? Because to me it looks like a form of sabotage. They were not looking for anything particular when you have such a wide range of a hack. And now that you have NATO headquarters cyber center in your country, now I can appreciate even more hacking, not because of Estonia, but because of Estonia offering services to NATO. And I want to add one line to this trust business. Of course, we have one major and one adversary. Unless we have trust between us, this problem between India, China, India, Pakistan is going to go on forever. But the way to improve trust, besides what you have said, we have a super electoral system. In fact, we are models to the rest of the world. Where we are quite not coming up is that we do not elect the right kind of representative. The day India invests and does that, you will find that our trust will be built. Thank you, Chair.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I managed to make it work, meanwhile. You're listening to the question. So it now asks me to vote, and I'll try to do that. Here you see all the candidates who are up for vote. I can choose one of them, but I'd ask you to close the screen because I want you to know whom I'm going to vote for. So if you turn it off for a moment. So, now I prove it. You can switch it on again. Now they ask me to sign it digitally. Okay. Well, I'm waiting. I'm sure I'm not answering your question. As for the Cyber Defense Center of Excellence, the idea to establish, finished successfully. The idea to establish, thank you. The idea to establish such a center was taken long before the attacks. So they were formally or causally not interrelated. As for building trust under serious historic and cultural ethnic tension, it usually happens only when environment changes. And that means common win-win situation emerges. Like to make somebody a friend from an enemy, you must have win. And I don't know your problems from a distance, so it's not a wise to advise you. But I can reflect a little bit on how we develop with our big neighbor, including the Russian ethnic minority in Estonia, which comes now about 30%. Second generation is trying to manage the problem, but of course we live a little bit separated, the communities. taking into account demographic development, global in European part, we see more and more foreigners coming in from different parts of the world. And day after day, we learn that our Russian neighbors are much more like us than they were 10 years ago, because the newcomers are even more different, culturally, speak different languages. We even don't understand them sometimes. So by changing our demographic shifts, our neighbors and minority Estonia is really becoming closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. And in the course of time, we don't make a difference anymore because we see different people coming from even further away. So I hope the same happens not only in Estonia, but also here.
We're going to move straight into our next session, since we're running a little behind time. So we want to thank you, of course, for being here, and a little token from our side. If I can, we'll just put some extra chairs in a minute. Siddharth Bhatia, Chair of Communications and the Digital Economy Committee at FICCI, and the President of AT&T South Asia. Mr. Bhatia, over to you.
Thank you. A warm welcome to this morning session and to my fellow delegates. The session about